The only reason I stepped into that cafe was because the light turned red too fast and I didn't feel like waiting on the corner with a half-warm muffin. That's it. No grand plan, no sixth sense. Just a stupid breakfast detour. I didn't even notice her voice at first. It blended into the buzz of early chatter and espresso machines. But then I heard his name. Not mine. His. Saw thinks it's hilarious that he still doesn't know. She giggled, like, I literally got out of his bed at 5:40 a.m. And 20 minutes later, my husband was handing me car keys and telling me how proud he was of my work ethic. My hand froze on the lid of the coffee cup. Another voice chimed in. Male, amused. You're evil. She laughed. That laugh. The one I used to think was just for me. No, I'm efficient. Sawyer's for pleasure. Wendell's for the paperwork. A chair scraped. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I knew if I saw her face, I'd break something. Myself, probably. She kept talking. I kept breathing. Last week, he asked if I still felt the same way. Can you believe that? I said yes while texting Sawyer under the table. Laughter again. I hadn't even sat down yet. I was standing 5 feet behind them, blocked by one of those fake bookshelf dividers, holding a paper bag with a warm muffin I had planned to leave on her table as a surprise. No, not note, just one of those small, ridiculous gestures people in love make. I should have walked out. I should have walked out. Instead, I moved to the empty table beside theirs, sat slowly, quietly, and let my world burn one sentence at a time. You don't think he suspects? One of the women asked. Darcy snorted. Wendell? He still thinks I do yoga on Tuesdays. I haven't been to a class in 2 years, unless you count stretching over Sawyer's kitchen counter. I closed my eyes. My palms were sweating. My ears were ringing. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. The muffin in the paper bag felt like a prop from a joke I didn't get. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, she said, I might actually tell him soon, you know, just to see what kind of sound he makes. It's been so long since he showed any real emotion. I want to know if there's still a human under all that. I don't know. Gentle silence. Gentle silence. That's what she thought of me. I was still sitting there when they left, all 4 of them smiling, sipping like they'd just wrapped a sitcom scene. Darcy didn't look back once. Not once. I stared at the muffin in the bag. I don't know how long I sat there. I don't know when I started crying or when the coffee turned cold in my hands. I just know everything in my chest went quiet. And now I know the game she's been playing. But I'm not walking away. Not yet. Because if she wants to see emotion, oh, she's about to get it. That night I watched her brush her teeth while humming some stupid commercial jingle. She looked so casual, like the day hadn't fractured in half, like our words in that cafe weren't still crawling up the walls of my skull. I was sitting on the edge of our bed with the lights off, staring at the floor, and she walked in like nothing had happened. I picked up oat milk on the way home, she said, wiping her mouth with the towel. They had your brand this time. I nodded, which was apparently enough for her. She flopped into bed, scrolled through her phone for a few minutes, then rolled over and fell asleep, like she hadn't just talked about stretching across another man's counter hours earlier. I barely slept. My brain kept rewinding that meeting in the cafe. Every laugh, every dig, every casual cruelty. I wanted to shake her awake and scream. I wanted to ask, how long? How could you? What did I do wrong? But instead, I just laid there counting her breaths, wondering when she started breathing like a stranger. The next morning, I acted normal. Too normal. I made her smoothie, added the protein powder she never finishes, kissed her cheek and watched her leave like some kind of tragic sitcom husband, too clueless to notice. He's already been written out of the plot. But I wasn't clueless anymore. I had clarity. Painful, pulsing clarity. And for the first time in years, I made a decision for me. I took the day off, called in sick. Then I drove to the old parking garage near her office. Not the main one, the private one she uses when she doesn't want to deal with coworkers. She had no idea I had the spare clicker. That clicker used to be about trust. Now it was about truth. At 11:08 a.m., a navy blue Audi pulled up next to hers. Out stepped Sawyer, khaki blazer, smug energy, and the posture of a man who thinks no one would dare question him. I stayed low behind the windshield. I didn't need to confront him. I just needed confirmation. And I got it. When she arrived 5 minutes later, sunglasses and all, looking like she was stepping out of a perfume commercial. She didn't even check her surroundings. She smiled and slid into his passenger seat like they've been doing it for years, which apparently they had. They didn't drive far, just 2 blocks down to a boutique hotel I'd never even noticed before. She clung to his arm, laughing at something I couldn't hear. He handed his keys to the valet like he owned the city. I followed on foot, crossing the street slowly, breathing slower. My fingers trembled on the zipper of my hoodie. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I had to do something. Inside the hotel lobby, I stood behind a display of overpriced gift baskets and watched her lean over the check-in desk. She giggled. He touched her lower back. The receptionist smiled at them like they were just another married couple sneaking away from their kids for a lunch-hour adventure. She turned slightly. For a moment I thought she saw me. She didn't. She never looked twice. That night, when she came home and complained about how exhausting her pitch meeting was, I wanted to throw something. Instead, I asked if she wanted tea, and I made it just the way she liked. Cinnamon, 2 sugars, almond milk. Because that's who I've always been. The sweet one, the gentle one, the one she called safe and soft. She thinks I'm still that man. But the next time she looks into my eyes, she's not going to see safety. She's going to see a mirror. And I'm going to make sure she hates what she sees. 3 days passed. 3 entire days of pretending I was asleep when she climbed into bed after midnight. 3 days of her taking longer showers and coming out in hotel bathrooms I never remembered buying. 3 days of her casually humming in the kitchen while texting someone she labeled in her phone as Aunt Kay, the person who doesn't exist and never has. I watched her spin lie after lie, perfectly choreographed, as if she'd rehearsed each line in a mirror. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The different perfume she wore on pitch meeting days. The subtle ways she'd check her teeth in the reflection of the microwave after a suspiciously long client lunch. The small secret smiles she saved for her screen. Smiles I hadn't seen directed at me in months. And me, I was unraveling in silence. I'd become a ghost inside my own life. But the strange thing was she didn't notice. Or maybe she just didn't care. It was on the 4th night while I sat in the dark at the dining table eating cold noodles straight from the container that I realized I hadn't actually spoken to her in almost 30 hours. Not a full sentence. Not even a question. She was there brushing past me, asking where the mail was, leaving lipstick marks on glasses she never finished. But nothing real, nothing human. I wondered if she even remembered who I was before this version of me. The pale, anxious guy tiptoeing around his own home, trying not to upset the woman who had already left him emotionally, if not physically. And then something happened that changed everything. At 11:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. She was in the shower and the screen lit up face down on the couch. I'm not proud of what I did next, but it doesn't matter. I picked it up. My hand shook as I flipped it over. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You looked incredible in that dress. And out of it. S. There was a photo attached. A blurry mirror selfie from the waist up. Not that kind of photo, but suggestive enough that my stomach turned inside out. She was smiling at her reflection, hand on hip. And worse, she was wearing my hoodie. The same one she used to borrow when we watched movies on the floor in our first apartment. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at her betrayal glowing in my palm while the shower continued to run like white noise, trying to erase the moment. She came out 5 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, smelling like citrus and deception. She passed me without a word, hair dripping onto the hardwood. I thought, this is the part in the movie where someone screams, where glass shatters, where the husband storms out with a suitcase and dramatic music swells. Instead, I set the phone back down face up. I wanted her to see it, but not yet. Not while she still had control. So I started digging. Over the next 2 days, I pulled every digital thread I could find. I recovered deleted texts from our old shared iPad. I traced her work retreats to hotel invoices buried in our joint account under vague names like Urban Wellness Experiences. I even found a second email address tied to her old college account that she'd reactivated 5 months ago. That was where the real treasure trove was. Dozens of threads between her and Sawyer, some of which went back a year. One message, dated Valentine's Day, simply read, "He gave me a necklace. You gave me a reason to keep breathing." I remember physically recoiling like I'd just taken a punch I never saw coming. That night, I sat on the floor in our laundry room, surrounded by dryer sheets and socks missing their pairs. And I let myself cry for the first time in years. Not loud, not theatrical. Just quiet, exhausted tears from a man who realized he'd been losing something long before he ever knew it was gone. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I wanted to rewind time. I wanted the version of her who used to fall asleep with her hand resting on my chest. I wanted my own life back, but it was too late for all that. And what I did next, I'm not even sure it was the right thing, but it was the only thing I had left. It started with a box. Not metaphorically, an actual box, medium-sized, nothing fancy. Just something I found in the basement where we used to keep Christmas decorations we hadn't used since our last real winter together. I wiped off the dust, opened the flaps, and for the first time in my life, I decided to collect evidence. Not to shame her, not even to expose her, but for me, so I could prove to myself that I wasn't crazy, that the empty feeling in my chest wasn't weakness, it was awareness. I printed the emails, the text threads. I even screen captured the hotel confirmations and receipts, stapled them into a neat little stack, and put them under an old college sweatshirt of hers, the one with the faded university logo she used to wear while watching documentaries about cults and true crime, back when she still liked telling me things. Then I added something she wouldn't expect. A copy of my handwritten will. No, not because I wanted to die. That's not where this is going. But I wanted her to know I had reached that point. The place beyond shouting, beyond begging, beyond tears. I wanted her to sit with the idea that I had considered the possibility that my life without love or truth wasn't much of a life at all. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see if she'd finally feel something real. Not guilt, not pity. Just recognition. But I didn't stop there. I called her mother. We hadn't spoken in nearly 8 months. It was awkward, brittle. I told her I wanted to ask a few questions about Darcy's recent behavior. Her voice tightened. She paused, and then she said something that cracked the concrete under my feet. "Wendell, I thought you two had an arrangement." An arrangement? She went on to say that Darcy had mentioned months ago that we had some kind of understanding, that our marriage was more of a business partnership now, that we had quietly moved on from the expectations of a monogamous relationship. I couldn't even respond. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I ended the call 5 minutes later, barely able to breathe. Darcy hadn't just been cheating. She had rewritten the entire narrative of our marriage and sold it to the people who once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. That night I sat across from her at dinner while she scrolled on her phone, barely touching her roasted vegetables. I had made the meal from scratch, something French. She used to like when I cooked fancy. Now she didn't even ask what it was. I asked her softly, "Do you still think I'm the same man you married?" She looked up, startled, blinked, then gave me the smile she gives her clients when she wants to deflect. "Of course I do. You've always been steady." Steady. It landed like a slap. That word, that polite little cage she kept me in. I just nodded and said nothing. Let her finish her wine. Let her retreat to the bedroom while I did the dishes like I always did, hands shaking over hot water and soap suds. The next morning I told her I'd be going away for a few days to clear my head. She barely reacted. "Okay, text me when you get there." No questions, no curiosity. I left that day, but not to clear my head. I checked into the same hotel she used with Sawyer. I paid in cash. I booked the same room under a different name. Not to spy, not to sabotage, but to understand. I needed to see what she saw in that place, what part of herself she left there and what part of me she buried. Room 312. Pale blue walls, overpriced water bottles on a silver tray. And in the corner, a chair, modern, cold, where I sat down and opened the box I brought with me. I laid out every piece of proof on the bed, every message, every receipt, every trace of the woman I thought I knew. And then I pressed record on my phone. I started talking to her. No yelling, no profanity. Just a man broken but not destroyed, reading her own words back to her quietly, carefully, line by line. I ended with my own voice trembling. If you ever wondered how far a quiet man can go before breaking, this is it. You reached the edge. You made it here. Congratulations. Then I sealed the phone in the box along with the papers, along with a photo of us on our 5th anniversary. The last time I remember feeling completely hers. I left the box on our bed at home, and I walked out. She'd return in 4 hours. I don't know what she'll do when she opens it, but for the first time in years I didn't feel powerless. I felt awake. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a call, a message, a scream, something broken. I guess deep down I wanted her to be horrified, maybe even devastated. But when I returned home 2 days later, everything was disturbingly untouched. The box was still there, right in the center of our bed, open, neat. Nothing moved, nothing torn. And Darcy? She was in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping sparkling water from a wine glass like it was a Thursday in a perfect marriage. "Hey," she said casually as if I'd just stepped out to take the trash. "You're back early?" I stared at her. My throat felt tight. I waited for something, a reaction, a confession. Even a lie would have meant she was still playing the game. But instead she smiled gently and tilted her head like a teacher trying to explain a difficult concept to a particularly slow student. "Wendell," she said, "you're hurt. I understand that, but I thought we were past pretending." I didn't understand. She walked around the kitchen island slowly like she was pacing herself for maximum damage. I didn't open that box because I didn't already know what was in it. "You wanted me to feel ashamed, right? Or maybe shocked. But we've been drifting apart for years. You just didn't want to see it." Her calmness was unbearable. There wasn't even malice, just a cold clinical kindness that made me want to scream. "So, you didn't read it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You didn't even care?" She set the glass down, and for the first time her expression flickered. Of course I care. I just think you're being theatrical. You never said anything, Wendell. Not once. You let the silence grow between us like moss, and now you want to be the victim of it. I felt like I was watching a completely different person, someone who had rehearsed every sentence in a mirror for months. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. You're not blameless, love. You stopped asking questions. You stopped seeing me. You retreated so far into yourself that I thought maybe you were grateful I was getting what I needed elsewhere. That word again. Needed. I wanted to argue. I wanted to grab the damn box and shake it in her face. Look what you did. But she had already deconstructed the whole thing, turned it into a philosophical debate about emotional absence. Like betrayal was some kind of mutual understanding I had missed the memo on. I left her standing there and went straight to the garage. I sat in the car with the engine off and the door open, breathing like a man who had just escaped a fire, but couldn't stop feeling the heat. I didn't even know what I felt. Not sadness, not rage, something deeper, something slower, a kind of nausea that no amount of time would ever digest. And that's when the second shock hit. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. Normally I'd let it go, but something made me answer. A man's voice, hesitant. Wendell. I didn't answer. I just waited. It's Sawyer. Everything in me went rigid. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, he said quickly. But I need to tell you something, Darcy. She's not who you think she is. I thought I knew her too. But he stopped, took a breath. I didn't call you because I feel guilty. I called you because she's been lying to both of us. There was a long pause. My heart was pounding. She told me you were open, that you had another partner too, that you agreed to all of this. And when I started asking questions, she blocked me, changed hotels, started pulling away. My mouth was dry. She's been playing both sides. He continued, not just you, me, her co-workers. I even met a guy at the hotel last month. She told him she was divorced. A tight laugh. Man, I don't think you were the only one she betrayed. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was press my forehead to the steering wheel and listen as the last piece of my illusion crumbled. I wasn't just a husband cheated on. I was a character in a story she'd rewritten a dozen different ways, depending on who was watching. When I finally walked back inside, Darcy was gone. So was the box. No note, no explanation, just the cold scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway, and a glass in the sink with lipstick on the rim. I don't know where she went, but I know this. She thinks I've been weak this whole time. What she doesn't realize is that weakness is over. The next morning was the first one in over a decade where I didn't make coffee for two. I walked past the empty side of the bed without flinching. Her pillow was untouched, her drawer half open, like she'd left in a hurry, but not for good. There were still 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom, 2 pairs of slippers by the door. But the house felt like it had been emptied of something far more important than things. The box was gone. She didn't say goodbye. No voicemail, no explanation, just absence. I stood at the kitchen sink and watched the neighbor's dog dig holes in their garden like nothing was wrong in the world. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to fix anything. I didn't clean. I didn't call. I didn't chase. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a diary, not a letter, not a manifesto. I wrote a list. It was a list of every lie I had swallowed without chewing. Every moment I had laughed when I should have asked. Every time I had been talked over, brushed off, condescended to, and had told myself she was just tired or stressed or being honest, I filled pages. Then I wrote another list. Not about her, about me. Things I gave up, things I wanted, things I'd never even said out loud because I had convinced myself it was easier to be easy. Easier to say yes than risk why. Somewhere on line 22 I wrote, I want to stop apologizing for not being dangerous. It was the most honest thing I'd ever written. That night Sawyer called again. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice was quieter this time. Unsure, I went to her office, he said. They said she quit. I didn't answer, just waited. She deleted her socials too. Gone. Like wiped again. Silence. You don't think she's planning something, do you? Now that made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was so desperately late. He was finally feeling it. The thing I'd been choking on for weeks. I don't know what she's planning, I said flatly, but I know what I'm not doing anymore. He asked me what I meant, but I'd already ended the call. 2 days later, I got a letter, an actual envelope. No return address, just my name and her handwriting. Inside was one sheet of paper, one paragraph, no apology, no emotion, just a single request. Please don't speak to anyone else about what you found. This doesn't need to be a scene. That's when I realized it. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing control of her image, the polished, untouchable, curated version of herself that she'd built across a dozen facades. She was never scared of hurting me. She was scared of anyone knowing she did. So I didn't make a scene. I didn't post anything. I didn't call her mother, her friends, her boss. But I did one thing. I scheduled a delivery. 3 weeks from now, on what would have been our 12th anniversary, she'll receive a package. Inside will be the box she returned to me with the contents shuffled, altered, weaponized. Not for revenge, but for memory. Inside, I placed a printed screenshot of her message to Sawyer, where she called me a ghost of a man who still pays the electric bill. A picture of us on our honeymoon in Alaska taped to the back of that screenshot. A receipt for the first meal I ever made for her, framed in a cracked photo frame. A printed copy of the list I made about myself with one line highlighted in yellow. I want to stop apologizing for not being dangerous. No letter, no signature, just the past and the part of me she never saw coming. I'm not sure what she'll feel when she opens it. Maybe nothing, maybe annoyance, maybe a cold shiver she can't name. But I'm not waiting for her reaction. I've already started building something new. Not out of rage, not out of spite. Out of the ruins of a man who finally saw himself and realized he never needed to be small to be kind. I heard the knock before I saw her car. 3 sharp taps, not loud, not hesitant, just enough to let me know it wasn't a stranger. But it had been weeks. Weeks of silence, no calls, no emails, no hints. Just that one line in a letter asking me to stay quiet, like this whole thing was an unfortunate misunderstanding, rather than an emotional war zone. So when I opened the door and saw her standing there, hair different, darker, styled with deliberate messiness, makeup that looked more like armor than beauty, I didn't say a word. Neither did she, not at first. She just stood there with a small, expensive suitcase behind her and a manila folder in her hand, like this was a business trip, and I was the hotel concierge. I don't expect to stay, she said finally. Can we talk? I didn't answer. I stepped aside. She didn't walk in like she used to. She moved cautiously as if the walls might scream at her. She stopped just short of the living room and set the folder on the coffee table. Then she sat. I stayed standing. I'm not here to ask you to take me back, she said quickly, eyes scanning the room like she was looking for something she left behind. I wasn't offering, I replied, calm as concrete, her lips pressed into a thin line. She tapped the folder with 2 fingers. I came to offer clarity, she said. That word sat like acid on my tongue. I didn't sit. I didn't touch the folder. I just watched her as she leaned back into the couch we used to fall asleep on during movie nights. Now, barely recognizable beneath the shadow of who we had become. She opened the folder. Inside were documents, papers. I caught glimpses of her signature, an outline of assets, lines about shared property, schedules, agreements. I'm moving to California, she said, voice thin. Santa Cruz with a startup. I've been consulting for them quietly the past few months. It's stable, fresh. No one knows me there. And saw her. I asked, not bitter, just needing the data point. She flinched. Gone. He started getting controlling, suspicious. Turns out liars don't trust other liars. He tried to threaten me with screenshots. I beat him to it, deleted everything and blocked him on every channel. She looked at me then, truly looked. I never thought you'd stay silent. I figured you'd implode, go public. Tell your side. I shrugged. Your version of me was never that accurate, was it? That actually made her blink. For the first time, she seemed off balance, like she was trying to keep her footing on ground she hadn't realized had shifted. I thought you needed me, she admitted quietly. I thought your silence was weakness. Wrong twice, I said. And then, for reasons I still don't fully understand, I sat down. Why are you really here, Darcy? I asked. She looked at her hands for a long moment, picked at a hang-ale like it mattered more than the mess between us. I'm pregnant, she said. Everything in the room stopped moving. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I felt the floor shift. It's not yours, she added. I know that. I took the test after Sawyer disappeared. It's his. I'm not here to ask for anything. Then why tell me? I asked, my voice almost a whisper. Because I wanted at least one person in the world to know the truth from me before they hear the story I'll eventually tell, she said. And for a moment, just a moment, she looked like someone drowning slowly. She stood up, zipped the folder shut, and handed it to me. It's all there. You keep the house, the car, everything we shared. I don't want it. I'll file everything through the lawyers. You won't have to see me again. She moved toward the door, but before she left, she turned back and added, You didn't deserve what I did to you, Wendell. You were a good man. Then she was gone. I stood there in the quiet that followed, folder in my lap, that final sentence ringing in my ears like a mocking lullaby. You were a good man, not loved, not wanted, just good. I didn't cry, not this time. I opened the folder, and at the very bottom, beneath the property breakdowns and pre-signed statements, was an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a single photograph. Us from a road trip in Oregon. The one moment I'd forgotten existed. Her head on my shoulder, my arm around her. Both of us laughing unposed. On the back she had written 3 words in tiny black ink. That part was real. I sat with that sentence for hours. Not because I believed it, but because I wanted to. For weeks after she left, I didn't touch the living room. Her books still lined the bottom shelf, their spines memorized by my fingers. The candle on the window still burned itself down without me lighting it again. Even the faint perfume in the hallway faded without effort, like it too had finally stopped trying to stay. But the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, empty in a way that finally felt intentional. I stopped listening for footsteps. I stopped checking my phone. I started breathing, I began walking more. I found this park nearby I never knew existed. It's got this weird little bench under a crooked tree. It doesn't face the main path. It faces a patch of overgrown weeds and wild flowers that no one seems to care about. I sit there some mornings with my coffee. Sometimes I bring a journal. Sometimes I just exist. I joined a small local art group, not because I'm good, I'm awful, but something about holding a paintbrush and watching colors blend where I didn't expect them to. It gave me a sense of control again, and chaos too, but the good kind, the kind that says you can start over and it doesn't have to make sense right away. I went to therapy. I sat in a room with someone who didn't know either of us, who didn't have a side, who didn't speak until I did. I talked about things I hadn't admitted to myself, not even in the laundry room or the front seat of my car, not even in that hotel room where I poured out my pain into a camera lens. I said it out loud. I let myself shrink because I thought love was about taking up less space. That was the beginning. And as for Darcy, I never saw her again. I don't know if she kept the baby. I don't know if she stayed in Santa Cruz. I don't search for her. I don't wait for updates. But I do wish her peace. Not because she deserves it. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. But because I do. I deserve to wish someone well without bleeding for it. I deserve mornings without fear. I deserve to be a good man and still choose myself. A few weeks ago, I met someone at the art group. Her name's Camille. She's quiet, but not passive. She once told a guy off for taking her brush without asking. She laughs with her whole chest, and she doesn't flinch when I pause too long before answering a question. She doesn't know my full story. Not yet. But she knows enough. We went for coffee after our last session. Not at the old cafe. I haven't stepped foot in that place since. This one was new, bright, smelled like cardamom and possibility. She asked if I liked where I was in life, and I didn't lie. I said, "Not always, but I like where I'm headed." She smiled. That was enough. So no, I didn't get revenge. I didn't post screenshots. I didn't scream in a parking lot or smash her perfume bottles. I didn't rise from the ashes as some fierce version of myself. That's not me. I didn't burn the bridge. I just let it sink. And then I swam. And you know what? The water's warmer than I.